Hey, welcome to my YouTube channel. I'm here with my Yogi Tea and we're about to dive into some Q&As. So what I did is, because I'm launching my channel, I wanted to ask you guys what you were curious to know about me, if anything. And it turns out that I had some amazing questions from people. I found that they were in two categories. One was personal and one was business. So I will address all of those questions, but in two separate videos. And today we're going to focus on the personal questions so that you can get to know me and why on earth I would decide to start a YouTube channel. One of the first questions that I had came from Harley, and Harley asked, who are your inspirations and mentors? And my first yoga inspiration was actually my Aunt Sally. Sally is my dad's sister and she lives in Wales. And when we were growing up, all we heard from my dad was like the tale of Sally, how she was the black sheep of the family because she lived in the mountains of Wales and she grew her own food and she was vegetarian, and oh my God, she raised her children vegetarian. Can you imagine? Back, it was like in the 80s, right? So it wasn't cool back then. Or not as mainstream, let's say. And she taught yoga for a living and she did massage therapy, and her life partner, who she never married, also big scandal, did acupuncture, and he owned a little bike rental shop in the village where they lived. To me, this was absolutely fascinating because I grew up in a very typically North American environment, you know, pretty materialistic. So it turns out she was just ahead of her time, because now pretty much my whole family is vegetarian. All my aunts and uncles, all my cousins are vegetarian. My cousins are giant. So Sally's kids are like towering over me, and they're super smart kids. Obviously, no problem at all that they grew up vegetarian. And she also sent this book to my sister. I don't know if you see this. It is the Sivananda Companion to Yoga. And you can see it's well used and well loved, with a lot of really, like, even my notes in there, but like funky looking people in very 80s, 70s, 80s clothing. I ended up sneaking it into my room and I would devour it. I would look at every little aspect of that book. I never actually tried the poses, but it certainly had a big influence and opened my mind to this magical world of yoga. So although my aunt was my first big yoga inspiration, I actually didn't start practicing yoga until much later, which brings me to the next set of questions. So Melanie Hang asked, I would like to know how you got into yoga and how taking your first yoga class made you feel. And Romy also asked, how did you get into yoga? So thanks, girls, for that question. Well, first of all, my first yoga class, I still remember my sister brought me. It was in Ottawa to a Bikram yoga class. And I was so nervous going in, and we just like stayed kind of on the side in the front row. I still remember where we were. The class was packed with people and the teacher hadn't walked in yet. And so we were kind of like giggling and chatting off to the side, like whispering and laughing. And he just walked right over to us, crouched down in front of our faces and was like, you need to be quiet. And we were so scared. So I don't remember how the rest of the class went. I just remember we didn't go back because I was like, got in trouble for talking in class, which of course now I would do the same thing to my students. So, you know, it was, he did the right thing, but it was pretty intimidating. So how I got into yoga after that was actually after university, which I actually studied television production at Concordia. I decided to give acting a real shot. I had always loved acting. I was acting on stage in school productions and took classes and things like that, acting classes growing up. And so I thought, okay, this is my chance. You only live once. I got my headshot done. I had the support of my family. I was very lucky. They said to go for it. It was so hard to get an agent. Even though I was doing acting classes and I met a lot of other actors who had agents, I wasn't part of the acting union. So it was really that catch-22 of like, if you're not already in the acting union, you can't get a gig, but if you don't have a gig, then you can't get into the union. So there was this one agent who reluctantly took me on. At one of our first meetings together, I brought my CV, and I remember the dress that I was wearing. I loved it. It was this black short dress with like a turtleneck and bare sleeves. And I was hoping to walk in there and impress him. And instead he grabbed my CB and he just kind of had this tired look on his face, and he looked down and he looked back up at me and down again and then back up, and I was like, oh my God, feeling so self-conscious. And he just looks and he goes, is it really true that you're 125 pounds? Because that's what I had put on my acting CV. So I lied, I said yes, but actually I was 138 pounds. But I knew that if I wrote my real weight, that I really wouldn't have a chance of probably getting picked for any like pretty girl auditions. So he looks at me and he's skeptical, and he probably knows his business, and he's going, yeah, you're not really that. And even 125 I thought was a bit much. I wanted to say 120, but I felt it was too much of a stretch. So he just looks at me and he goes, really compassionately, like he wasn't trying to be mean at all. He was just like, you know, the anorexic look is in and you don't have it. You have an athletic build. So it's unfortunate, but I'm not going to be able to send you for leading roles. I'm going to send you for the role of the best friend. I didn't for 1 second question the standard of beauty. I just thought, oh my God, how can I get the anorexic look without actually developing an eating disorder? And I was reading a lot of magazines at that time, you know, fashion magazines and Cosmo and things like that, and being heavily influenced by the images I was seeing there. And a lot of the women that had the figures that were so desired, like Gwyneth Paltrow, they were doing yoga. And they were doing power yoga and Ashtanga yoga and hot yoga. And this was back in like 2002, 2003, maybe, for context. So I thought, okay, this might be my ticket. I wanted to be able to maximize, lose as much weight as possible and get as much exercise as possible, because that was all I really cared about at that time. So, you know, I chose Bikram because that was hot yoga and it sounded really intense. So I went and I started, and it was really intense, and I loved it. I actually loved Bikram, and I worked my whole life around it. I even worked like my meal schedule, and when I drank water, all around it, my work schedule around Bikram. It became kind of the center of my world for a little while. And I did that, and I started to see physical results, which I was happy about. You know, I was weighing myself a lot and sort of obsessed with that. So this leads into one of the next questions. So that was how I got into yoga. It was really through acting and wanting to lose weight. But then Christine said, you know, I love your story about coming to self-love through yoga. It says a lot about who you are, where you've been, and why yoga is so important to you. So I wanted to share a little bit about the next part of that journey. I lived right by this little yoga studio called Yoga Classic. It was on my way to the metro station every day going to Bikram. It was on top of what we call a dépanneur, like a corner store. There was a class starting at 5, I think it was 10 to 5. So I went in and I never looked back. I never went back to Bikram. I started Ashtanga yoga, then I started Hatha yoga in that beautiful space. So I was maybe at Yoga Classic for a year practicing regularly. Keep in mind that I was also at a restaurant, working at a restaurant with a bunch of coked out management. I wasn't making a lot of money. I was barely getting auditions. So all in all, it should have been a pretty miserable time in my life. And yet through the yoga practice, I was developing this internal confidence, this internal sense of peace and well-being that was foreign to me. I had never experienced that before. I had never felt good about myself if it wasn't based on some external validation. So, you know, if someone complimented me that I had lost weight, or if I got a good grade in school, then yeah, I knew where I stood. If a boy liked me, I knew where I stood. But I had never felt like I was okay just the way I was, ever in my life. Which boggles my mind now, which is why I opened a yoga studio, because I just couldn't believe that I had never been taught that value before, that I had that value. So one day I'm lying in Shavasana and I've just got the tears rolling out from the eyes. If you do yoga, you know this, like you tend to cry a lot in yoga. It releases a lot of emotions. And I just get up and I felt so light. I felt light as a feather. And I walked straight up to my yoga teacher and I had this huge grin, all tall, and I just went, I quit. I quit. I was so happy. And I felt like, okay, I quit. I knew I was gonna quit acting. I was probably gonna quit my restaurant job. I didn't know how it was all gonna work out, but I knew it had to happen, because in that moment was when I realized that I had been acting for all the wrong reasons, that I was trying to prove myself, that I was trying to be someone that I wasn't, and developing a lot of self-hatred in the process. So through yoga came this self-love, came this self-acceptance. And rather than try and prove myself to my agent, I actually went to my agent and said, I quit, and I don't care if I have the anorexic look or not, and I'm proud of my athletic build. So after I walked up to my yoga teacher and told her I was gonna quit everything, clearly I was at a fork in the road. And this brings me to my next question from Andrea Borod. She said, name a moment in your life that you came to a fork in the road and you chose one thing over the other. Well, I chose myself. I chose my self-esteem. I chose self-confidence over the approval of others. Doesn't mean I haven't relapsed, don't get me wrong. I still care about what other people think, unfortunately. So when I got to that fork in the road of realizing that I had been acting for all the wrong reasons, that I was really doing it for external approval, I took a little vacation and I took some time to reflect inward and realized that what I really wanted to do was share yoga with other people. It felt like a crossroads, but really it felt just so natural to take that next fork in the road and pursue the path of opening a yoga studio. So next we have a question from Charmin, and she says, talk about how you found out about your spirituality. So it really was kind of like discovering your sexuality at a younger age. It was like discovering I was spiritual. At first I was in denial about it because my dad was a dust-to-dust atheist and I had never believed in anything, especially not God. And so it was weird that I started going on these nature walks through the yoga practice, through books that I would start to read. The Artist's Way was one of the first books that I read that was like a spiritual book. And in that process, I started to feel like I was a spiritual person. And I actually remember calling my dad. I was cat sitting for this lady. And I remember being on the phone and just like bawling my face off and being like, Dad, I'm spiritual. And he just laughed and he was like, well, that's good. It would be very boring if you were just like me, you know? So luckily he was open-minded about my spirituality. So I was like coming out of the closet as being spiritual. And spirituality means that I have like this context to my life, that I feel like I have a sense of purpose, that I'm on this earth for a reason, that earth is a life school. We're on the earth school, as Gary Zukav would put it. And that I'm here to learn certain lessons, and that I will be put through certain trials, but it's only to help me grow, to elevate me, to raise my consciousness, and to awaken me into this new level of consciousness. So then that brings me to the next question from Deb. She says, how do you keep yourself motivated to stay on this path even with all the hardships? And trust me, there have been many hardships. And I think it's because of that, because I just put the hardships into context. I think the hardships are there to teach me something, or the hardships are there because I'm out of alignment with my spirit or with my path, and it's going, yo, come back this way. The other part to that question of how do I stay on the path with all the hardships and difficulties and everything is that I've seen how yoga not only has transformed my own life, but it has transformed countless of people's lives that I've met over the past decade through my yoga studio, whether it's through the sense of community that they find, whether it's through the teacher training programs or the drop-in classes. Honestly, I'm not just like trying to sell my stuff, even though I've got like this huge HappyTree symbol behind me this is artist John Schweitzer, who made this gorgeous homage to HappyTree. But it goes to show that people get really touched. And I think as soon as people touch that inner love, that self-confidence, it's invaluable. Like, I'm literally in the business of changing people's lives. Not saying that I'm like some guru who goes and like, you know, bonks somebody on the head and all of a sudden they're healed. Far from it. All I'm doing is I'm introducing people to a thousands of years old system that really truly works and that I believe in 100%. So even when shit gets hard, I know I'm doing something I believe in so unequivocally because I've experienced it. It's not just knowledge out of a book. It's an experience that I've had, and it's from that place that I want to share. So on to the next question from my student Cindy Schwartz. She asked, how has yoga changed you as a person outside of the practice? And really that's what the practice is for, it's actually not to change you, but it's to make you more of who you really are. So I think if anything, yoga has helped me to sort of sift through the tensions, the physical, mental, emotional tensions that are not really me, that were learned patterns, to get to the root of who I am, which is the same as the root of who everyone is, which is these joyful, divine, peaceful individuals who are compassionate. And not saying I'm not human, right? Like I have all my faults still, and I still get jealous, and I still get anxious, and I still get scared. I believe that what's good about me is what is true, not all the other bullshit. It's just made me more accepting of who I am, even when it comes to body image. And so I think by being more accepting of myself, it's made me more accepting of others. Maybe a little bit less judgmental, just a little bit. No, quite a lot less judgmental. So then that brings me to the next question. So Gordon asks me, when you have doubts about your body image, what do you do or say to yourself? I still, first of all, do get really shy. Like, it's crazy to me that I'm starting a YouTube channel because, again, I still somehow think, maybe ingrained from that, you know, just society and from my agent, that like only girls who are of a certain weight or size should be allowed to talk about yoga. And actually, that's why I'm talking to you, because I want you to see a girl of a different size. I want that the information that I share with you be valuable because of the life experience I've gone through, because of the wisdom that I've acquired through hardships, because of my resilience, because of what I've done, the devotion that I've had to yoga, and not you listen to me or you don't listen to me because I'm a size 10 or I'm a size 2. It's such crap. Like, it has nothing to do with how valuable the information is coming out of my mouth, I hope. If you think what I'm saying is BS, then great. Don't watch me, but don't not watch me because I don't look how you think I should. Does that make sense? I tell myself that there's got to be a lot of girls out there, and men as well, who would be happy to hear someone talk and show yoga who doesn't necessarily look like a girl in a magazine. That paradigm has to shift, and I want to be a part of that change. So I have to remember that my value is not based on my size or how much I weigh. And like my spiritual mentor, who I'm gonna totally bring on my channel, Lisa Lajoie, like she would say to me, because she's been telling me for years that I need to do these videos. And I was always like, no, well, I just wanna lose 10 pounds first, you know, like as if I forgot everything of what I already told you in this video of how I thought I had transcended that, but these patterns run deep, man. So I was still, you know, feeling self-conscious, and she just like, it's almost like she bonked me on the head and went, Mel, how selfish are you? How selfish is it that you don't want to share yoga with more people? This thing that you know transforms and benefits lives because you want to, what, lose a few pounds first? Are you insane? So I always keep her in the back of my mind too, that, you know, it shouldn't matter, and that I want to share with you from my heart, not to prove anything, but actually to hopefully make a difference in some of your lives. Next, Annie Savoie asked me, when you fall off the practice, how do you get back on? So when I fall out of practice, how do I get back on track? Well, first of all, I start to feel like total shit. I'm serious. If I stop practicing yoga, I get so much back into my mental habits and patterns of anxiety and of fear and of just like getting so impatient. So I know if I've been off yoga for a little while that I'm paying for it, basically. You just want to keep oiling your body so it works well. You want to keep breathing deep so that you can feel calm, and meditate so that shit doesn't disturb you as much as it normally would if you didn't. So that's what keeps me on track. And if I really need like a good boost, then I'll do a 40-day Kriya, where you're doing 40 days in a row of the same practice. The other thing that I'll do is, or that I've done a few times, more than a few times now, is Vipassana, which is the 10-day silent meditation retreat. So if I really think I've lost it, I'll go there and it'll just help to reset me on my practice, reset me on the path. All right, next question. This one I absolutely love. Barry Risman, who is a pillar of the Montreal yoga community. She is so cool. I have a lot of respect and admiration for her. And she asked me, what are your pet peeves? Oh my God, I totally have pet peeves, by the way. And I think the worst one for me is spiritual ego. That holier than thou attitude of, oh, well, you know, look at this yoga milestone that I reached, or look at, you know, what I eat in a day. And let me just do a little disclaimer here that I know a lot of people who've gone very, very far physically in their practice and spiritually, and people who eat like very strictly in their diet, very strict vegans, who are not annoying at all and that I love tremendously and who are wonderful examples for us. I'm just talking about people that kind of use it as a badge of honor, that it's like, hey, look at me, that kind of thing. So we call it spiritual ego when there's this kind of condescension, especially if it's coming from another yoga teacher. Then on the other hand, when the person's like, oh, I'm so humble, I'm so blessed, but they're just kind of saying it because they feel like they need to say it because they're a yoga teacher or a yoga student now. Like, just be honest, you know. And that's why I think on my channel, I want to be able to sometimes swear and sometimes tell you things about me that are not the most attractive, or they're just real, because ultimately what I admire is authenticity and people who are genuine. So my pet peeve, I guess, is people who are just fake, or who are influencers for maybe reasons that are not the best. Whew, guys, thanks for joining me on this marathon of questions. You guys, so many good questions. We're down to the last one now. Let me just have a sip of tea first. Oh, by the way, I thought this was super appropriate. You know Yogi Tea? It's like the Yogi Bhajan tea company. And there's like these little, almost fortunes, like these little quotes that you get on your tea bag. I love them. So my quote that I got before recording this was, there is nothing like you, there was nothing like you, and there shall be nothing like you. So what do I say to myself when I'm having body image issues, or when I have imposter complex, which I do get? Well, this is it, you know, only I can tell the message the way that I tell it. So we're finally down to our last question from my sister, Rebecca Richards. I love my sister so much. If you end up liking this YouTube channel, you can thank her, because she was the one that really pushed me to do it. And so she says, I have a few questions for you, Melly. That's my nickname. What is your YouTube channel about, and what kind of videos can we look forward to? Also, what are your goals with the channel? My goodness. This is a really important thing to know, so that you don't just think I want to put my face out there for nothing. My goal with the YouTube channel is to inspire self-worth, self-acceptance, heart wisdom, that people feel okay just being themselves and being genuine and authentic. And again, like I said, out of that self-acceptance comes a greater acceptance for others. I basically want to change the world, and that's not coming from a spiritual ego place, that's just coming from the ripple effect. So if I can reach a broader audience through the medium of YouTube and through social media and have a positive voice, that's what I really care about. I want to help people reach their full potential. And the kinds of things that I'm going to be sharing are, you know, my own rituals, my own struggles. You know, one thing that I'm dying to do is like learn to cook with you guys, because I don't really cook, and I want to really start on a plant-based diet. So I might bring in a guest to show me how to do that. You know, I have like lots of ideas of ways that I want to take you on the journey with me. I want to give you tips for how to deal with anxiety. The other content that I want to share with you on the channel is little yoga tutorials. I want to do guided relaxations for you, teach little meditation tutorials as well. I want to be there to help you guys so that you can flourish and be the best you can be. So that's my goal. Anyway, I really, really hope that this wasn't boring and that you got some really interesting tidbits about me and some things that hopefully inspired you a little bit and make sense to you. And I hope that you will subscribe to my channel, and please write in the comments below if there are other questions that you would like to hear about. Like I said, we're gonna do a part 2 of this with more the business side of yoga, because I've had a yoga studio for over 10 years, so I can tell you a little bit about that. And meanwhile, please subscribe to my channel, give the video a thumbs up, and I will look forward to seeing you in the next video.